Bangers. 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 Bangers.
The shark still looks fake.
Hey, Mr. Mash! It's a beautiful day outside. The sun is shining, the weather is warm, it was a long winter, and winter's finally over. You know what I want to do? Let's go to the beach!
Glub, glub.
It's a beautiful day at the beach here on the Bangers and Mash Show. And you know what being on the beach makes me think about?
Sharks.
What's the most famous movie about sharks, Mr. Mash?
Jaws.
That's right. It's a pretty good movie, that Jaws.
Bada.
The first time I saw Jaws was in the basement of a friend, and I was really young. I was probably too young. And I think the thought process was, this is a PG movie, he'll be fine.
Jaws is really a PG movie.
It really is a PG movie. All of these are PG. The last one might be PG-13.
Wow. Could have easily been an R.
Yeah, it really could have been. I was like 5, 6 years old watching this movie, and I really liked it. But afterwards, I was afraid to take a bath for months. I was afraid that the shark was going to come up through the drain and get me somehow.
Are you sure you didn't see Jaws 3?
So this film definitely had a profound effect on me. Do you remember when you first saw Jaws?
Oh, years ago. Actually, it was one, I don't bring him up all the time, but Joe Bob Briggs.
Yeah, Monster Vision on TNT.
Yeah.
We were just talking about him.
I know.
For a while, there was a time when I had the audacity to say that Jaws, in my opinion, was a perfect movie. I still think Jaws is a really good movie. It's pretty damn close to perfect.
Yeah.
Really. It's a true masterpiece. Let's dive right in, as it were.
We could dredge the material a little bit, I guess.
We don't want to get too far out to sea, though.
Reel it in a little bit, okay?
There is a creature alive today who has survived millions of years of evolution without change, without passion, and without logic. It lives to kill. A mindless eating machine. It will attack and devour anything. It is as if God created the devil and gave him jaws.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Steven Spielberg worked mostly on TV before this. It was a best-selling book by Peter Benchley, based on a true story, based on the 1916 Jersey Shore man-eater. It was a real shark that swam into the Jersey Shore and was eating people back in the early 1900s that inspired Peter Benchley to write the book, and the book was a huge bestseller.
Was the book all Jaws?
Yes, it was. For some reason, Universal picked this mostly inexperienced director, this guy who'd never really done anything this big before, to make the movie. Production was fraught. Mechanical shark frequently malfunctioned, which is why you don't see it in most of the movie. Spielberg just hated shooting on the water. They went over schedule, over budget. It was a disaster. The crew behind the director's back would call the movie flaws. None of that ended up mattering because the film went on to become a massive hit. Consider it the first blockbusters. Jaws, what's it about, man? What's this movie about?
A shark named Jaws?
No, the shark isn't actually named Jaws. We've talked about this.
I know, it's Bruce. Yeah, Bruce, isn't it?
We talked about this on Our Favorite Things episode back in February. Technically, the shark does not have a name. It's just the shark. The nickname for the shark was Bruce, which was Steven Spielberg's lawyer, har har. A lot of people do call the shark Jaws. Sometimes it bothers me, sometimes it doesn't. You know, it's not a big deal. What else are you going to call it? It's not as egregious as calling John McClane Die Hard. Do you remember the name of the location?
Amity?
Amity Island. Amity seems like a nice place to live. That's like one of the things that makes this movie work so well to live. It seems like a very old-fashioned place.
My dream place to live would be in a small town like that.
When you look at this movie in the context of Spielberg's career, the Americana small town thing is something he's returned to repeatedly over the years. But there is one thing about Amity that isn't nice, and that's the mayor.
Yes. He's the real antagonist of the film.
He really, in a way, is. It's sort of his fault.
Yeah, the shark's eating people, but the shark is also a shark.
It would quickly become a cliche. The beaches stay open. Inevitably, some authority figure says when there's a monster or an animal or something killing people, the beach, the forest, the camp, etc. stays open, because otherwise there wouldn't be a movie.
Parade.
And in the book is actually very different from the film. In the book, there's this big subplot about how the mayor has to keep the beaches open because he owes money to the mafia. And all that got cut out of the movie. So in the film, the villain is greed and stupidity and human pride. Now, I've heard people try to make the case over the years that Jaws isn't a horror film.
I don't know how I feel about that. There's an awful lot of blood. It's very suspenseful.
It's not just a horror movie. It's also an adventure film. The horror sequences in this are so incredibly effective. It's the opening scene of the movie, one of the opening scenes, when the girl goes skinny dipping in the ocean, which again would also become a cliche.
Jaws kind of is the movie that started that.
Probably did. If you've never seen the movie before, and you don't know what's happening, it's a very startling moment. She's in the water, something grabs her, she's thrashed back and forth. There's that moment where she just starts shivering because she's going into shock, which is so creepy.
Oh yeah. It's even creepier on Blu-ray, by the way.
Oh yeah, I bet this movie looks gorgeous on Blu-ray.
Oh, it does.
The ocean is peaceful and quiet. She's screaming and thrashing, and then she disappears beneath the waves, and it goes back to being silent and serene. That gets at one of the things that is powerful about this film. It's about life being interrupted by random, cruel tragedy. That is what Jaws is about. When the shark gets the little boy on the beach, which is a very unsettling sequence.
Is that the one where you just see the shark like a tailspin almost?
He's doing a death roll.
Man, that scene gets me every time. I've seen this movie 100 times, and every time when you see that fin, I'm like, well, what the fuck was that?
All this blood in the water, and there's that wonderful reverse dolly zoom on Brody's face as he's sitting on the beach. What makes that scene disturbing for me is not so much any of the visceral attacking stuff, but immediately afterwards where the boy's mother is on the beach looking for her child.
And another really powerful scene in this movie, since you bring up the mother, when...
My boy is dead.
Yes. I have seen on the internet where that scene catches a bunch of flack. Some people say it's overdone, but that's a very natural reaction.
She's in grieving. Her child's been killed.
I know, but the internet's cruel.
I guess it's a little hammy, but whatever. I think it's a great moment. A lot has been made of the decision to slowly reveal the shark. We don't really see a lot of the shark in the first hour of the film. Now, I've already said that was budget-saving measure. They didn't show the shark because the fucking shark model, the robot, didn't work. Leaving it off-screen is such an interesting choice. Turns the shark into more than just an animal. It suddenly becomes a symbol to me. The animal seems almost supernatural. The shark is symbolic of how cruel and random the universe can be sometimes. You can be a normal, healthy, happy person, step off a curve, get hit by a car, and die. That's what the shark is. It's random fate. Something this film does get criticized for is the shark itself, the prop. They say it doesn't look real.
You can definitely tell it's a robot shark.
No shit, it's not real.
Still effective. You can't always tell.
My reaction to when people say the shark looks fake, as Marty McFly did in Back to the Future Part 2, why should it look real? It's not an ordinary shark, for one thing. King Kong didn't look real. Godzilla didn't look real. It's a movie.
You can't always tell that it's not real.
The very famous "we need a bigger boat" scene, we first really get a good look at it. There's an earlier scene when it attacks the guy in the boat and we see the leg fall down. We see the shark through the water. On VHS, I could never see the shark in the water approaching the guy on the boat. Watching it on DVD, you can see it. I'm sure it's even clearer on Blu-ray. But something Quint says later in the movie about how sharks have black eyes, like a doll's eyes. And this shark always has the black eyes. It's always in killing mode. The shark is a predator at the top of the food chain, unfazed by man's supposed dominance, and is determined to undermine it. I love Bruce. I just love the look of the prop.
He destroys a boat to kill people. He is badass.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember when the American Film Institute, this was like a decade ago, did the list of 100 greatest movie villains, and the shark from Jaws was on there. And fuck yeah. I know it's a puppet, but who cares? It's still a great villain. You know what else is really famous about this movie? The music. Yeah. And everybody remembers the shark's theme. There are other moods to the score too. Do you remember the ocean theme? Do 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 do. This feels like an old Navy shanty.
Yeah.
John Williams of Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Superman fame, really responsible for some of the most iconic film music of all time. Those foreboding strings suggest the presence of the shark even when it's off screen. And then there's this deepness to the score that is very foreboding. There are three central characters to this film. Martin Brody, the great late Roy Scheider, is so good in this. Brody, he's an everyman in the best sense of the word. Totally normal dude. He's got a wife, he's got 2 kids, he's super down to earth. But he's also an out-of-towner. He didn't grow up on the island. Despite that, he really is very invested in his job as the sheriff. He very much wants to protect this community. Scheider is so good in this role. Brody's a really great hero. He's not an extraordinary superhuman. He's just a guy. He's a regular dude.
He's a regular sheriff. He's straight out of New York.
Now, what do you think of Richard Dreyfuss as Matt Hooper?
I actually like Richard Dreyfuss in this.
The central three characters are all great. Dreyfuss,
This shark is a man-eater.
this shark is a killing machine.
All he does is eat, swim, and make shark babies.
He's so amusing to us. One of his great talents as a performer is he has this nervous quality to him. There's always the shiver to his voice. The sequence when he's doing the autopsy on the girl, and he realizes slowly that this is indeed a man-eater. Or when they're cutting open the one shark, the tiger shark they found. He's really afraid the little boy's dead body is going to fall out on the dock. But instead he pulls out the license plate, visible tremble in his voice. This is one of the essential Richard Dreyfuss parts. And it's weird to think he was actually a pretty big star at the time. He had just come off of American Graffiti, which was a huge hit. The 70s were a different time, man. Somebody who looked and sounded like Richard Dreyfuss could be a movie star. Wouldn't happen today. But I think the character in this movie everybody really admires is Quint. Quint's the badass.
See, I don't really care for him. I think he's too much of a smug bastard.
He's a prickly fellow, basically hazing Hooper when they first meet. He's grabbing his hands and saying, "Your skin's awfully soft, boy." Such a great performance from Robert Shaw. He's super misanthropic when he's introduced by scratching his nails on the chalkboard.
This is actually a really effective scene.
He's not an easy fellow to like. Even after they grow to like him, he still is kind of a prick when he smashes the radio, because it's personal between him and the shark. That monologue he delivers about being on the Indianapolis, which is a true story. It's a real thing that happened. For years now, they've been threatening to make a movie about the Indianapolis. And I know at one point the people who made Open Waters was going to make that, which seemed like a pretty good match. That monologue he delivers, famously improvised, wasn't in the script. Robert Shaw came up with that himself. And that's why Quint hates sharks so fucking much. He's introduced, he's boiling shark jaws. Fascinating character. Great performance from Shaw, and he gets a badass death scene. He goes down fighting.
So does the shark, now to mention it.
Speaking of the three guys, this film is brotastic, man.
Brotastic.
It's about three dudes on the ocean hanging out.
Hanging out.
There is some humor. When they're out on the ocean and the movie becomes an old-fashioned maritime adventure, Hooper's trying to get a picture of the shark, telling Brody to stand on the bow of the ship in the foreground so he can get context of how big this thing is. Brody yells, "Foreground my ass!" The very famous scene is when they're in bottom of the ship drinking and singing. Wonderful, wonderful sequence.
Now, do they start that cliche?
What, the manly bonding? No.
No, I mean repairing wounds.
No, I'm sure movies did that before. This is certainly a wonderful example of it, especially when Hooper points to his chest and says, "This girl broke my heart. That's my biggest wound."
I don't know why, but that line has always touched me. I guess because I can relate to that so well.
Well, who can't? And it is touching the way these guys are all very, very different from each other, but they all form this weird bond, even though Quint is kind of a psycho.
Kind of a psycho?
The scene when he smashes the radio, that's when the audience agrees that Quint's over the line now. The last hour of this movie is pretty freaking awesome. When they're actively pursuing the shark, they're hitting it with the arrows, with the barrels, trying to bring it up, which does not work. Big turning point is when Hooper goes down in the cage, which is not a smart thing.
Yeah.
When I first saw the movie, I was like, oh shit, is Hooper dead? Because I missed the scene of him swimming away after the shark destroys the cage. Even then, he disappears for a while. Maybe Jaws got him. One of Spielberg's very first movies was a film called Duel, which stars the great Dennis Weaver, and it's about a guy who's on the road, pisses off a truck driver, and is pursued by this ominous 18-wheeler. Jaws has a lot in common with Duel, especially the end, where in both movies it becomes a duel between very human protagonists and this inhuman threat. Brody's in the boat, the Orca is the name of the boat, and it's going down, it's sinking, and the shark is swimming at him. And you mentioned the shark's death scene, which is completely implausible. I think they did this on Mythbusters. If you shot an oxygen tank, if you could make that shot, which you wouldn't be able to, but if you could make it, it wouldn't explode like that. But who cares?
It's a movie.
Exactly. In the book, the shark is caught in a net and harpooned and drowns. Sharks have to keep moving. Spielberg said that's not going to work in a movie, man. You got to blow the fucking shark up. What does Brody say before he shoots the oxygen tank and the shark goes kablooey?
See you next movie.
That's what he should say. But instead he delivers that great line, "Smile, you son of a bitch."
Yeah.
And that's the thing about movies. In real life, you wouldn't be able to think of a pithy one-liner.
So for just fucking die.
Yeah, really. Please don't eat me. One of my favorite bits about this movie is after the shark blows up, you see its bloody body sinking through the water. You can hear this echoing moan. You remember that?
Moan.
Yeah, the shark was really more sea monster than shark. A weird leviathan noise as it finally dies. Another interesting thing about the film is that it pretty much ends after that. There's no long resolution. Hooper pops back up. They grab onto a piece of driftwood and they swim to shore. You don't really need anything else. Great movie, wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. It's a shark killing people.
Yeah.
There's really not too many ways you can mess that up.
There have been a lot of crappy shark movies.
But even then, they're still mildly entertaining. Even Sharknado has its moments.
I didn't like Sharknado. Is Jaws your favorite Spielberg movie? And I know it's hard to choose because he's made so many very good films.
Oh, no, Jurassic Park all the way.
There's Jurassic Park, there's Raiders of the Lost Ark, there's E.T., Close Encounters. All these are fantastic films. I think Jaws is my favorite Spielberg film.
In all the the vast and unknown depths of the ocean. How could there have been only one? None of man's fantasies of evil can compare with the reality of Jaws. Just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water, the legend continues.
A film as hugely, massively successful as Jaws, it went on to become the highest grossing film of all time before Star Wars came along. It was going to get a sequel. There was no way it wasn't going to happen. They actually asked Spielberg to come back. At the time, he said, I would never make a sequel. I don't want to repeat myself. But he has since, in interviews, admitted that the only reason he didn't make Jaws 2 is because he just hated shooting on the water. It was such a disaster to shoot at sea. No interest to do it ever again.
Well, I mean, that's his...
I think Steven Spielberg's done okay for himself. My problem with making a sequel to Jaws, how do you sequelize that story without repeating the first one? That's something the makers of Jaws 2 clearly couldn't come up with a good answer to. Essentially the same premise as the first one. But I actually thought of what would have been a good sequel idea. It should have followed Hooper, who, as a nautical researcher, is brought into some other place in the world where they're having a shark problem. At least it wouldn't have been the exact same scenario. It wouldn't have been another giant great white swims into Amity Island and starts eating people. It would have been a little different.
Jaws 2 clearly should have had 2 giant sharks.
Clearly! This, too, was a very troubled production. It went through 2 directors. Roy Scheider only did Jaws 2 because he was contracted to do so. He hated making the movie. He was antagonistic towards the director. The premise of Jaws 2 is the same shit happens the second time. A great white shark swims into Amity Island. Been about 4 years. Some people die. One of the scenes I do like in this film is half-eaten orca whale washed up on the beach. He's trying to convince Mayor that there's a shark out there. People are going to die. It's dangerous. Once again, the mayor says the beaches stay open. About the only thing that's different, premise-wise, in the sequel, Birdie's sons, one of which is now a teenager, Michael, and a bunch of other teenagers go out on a sailing trip just as the shark begins its rampage. It's personal this time between Brody and the shark. Inevitably, Jaws 2 is a less classy affair from the first one.
It already lost Spielberg.
They do up the gimmick tree in this one. I know you didn't get to see all of this film. Did you get to the scene where the shark blows up the helicopter?
No.
The shark fights a helicopter and the shark wins.
Well, clearly.
The first thing the shark really does in the movie is eat the water skier and then blows up the boat. And what happens when the shark blows up the boat? Its face gets burned.
Yeah.
So now the shark has this burned face. Now it's a two-face shark. They turned the shark into Jason Voorhees.
Now, is this the same shark from 4?
We'll get to 4 when we get there. It is meant to be a different shark that just happens to act and look very, very similar to the shark from the previous movie. No, this is not a ghost shark. It's not a voodoo shark. Not yet, anyway.
The mother says he's come back for us. And it's called Jaws the Revenge. It's got to be one of the sharks.
We're gonna get to the 4th movie, man.
But it's bugging me now.
In the first movie, they held off on revealing the shark, and in Jaws 2, they showed the shark almost immediately. There are a lot of what I would call jump scares. This was really before the jump scare as we know it today existed. The shark pops its head out of the water, you hear the music, John Williams returned for the score for this one. Another way this movie is sort of like a slasher film with a shark is that most of the victims are teenagers.
Wow.
Did you get to the scene where the one teenage couple do it on the boat, the boy goes diving afterwards and gets eaten?
I think I did make it different.
Even in that way, it's similar to a slasher film. This came out the same year as Halloween, before those rules were in place, but it is very similar. Do you remember anything about the teenagers?
I know Michael has long hair.
Yeah, they're very indistinct, is the point I was making. There's the nerdy one, there's class clown, there's the boyfriend and girlfriend, there's a religious girl, there's a girl that Michael has a crush on. I think she gets eaten.
Poor thing.
I'm not sure, because I really can never remember who the characters are in this film. The teenagers are not especially compelling. The movie tries to make them more distinct. It was just a case of too many characters. They didn't have enough time in the film to develop everybody. So I guess it's pretty clear that I'm not a super huge fan of this movie. What's your general opinion on Jaws 2?
I don't really know, to be honest. I don't really have an opinion of it.
The only thing I like about this movie is Roy Scheider. I think he really tries to elevate it. He gives a good performance. Brody is getting shark PTSD. He's on the watchtower on the beach. He sees a school of bluefin, and he runs out and starts shooting his gun into the ocean. They fire him because of it. His performance is interesting. It's still Roy Scheider doing his thing. The character's still very likable. That's the one thing Jaws 2 really has going for it. Otherwise, I think it's very much a generic shark movie. Did you get to see how the shark dies?
No. Do they blow him up again?
No. You remember earlier in the movie where the fishermen are out on the ocean and they pull up an electrical line?
Yeah.
That's what we in the business call foreshadowing. Later in the movie, Brody's got his hand on the power line and the shark's coming at him. Just as the shark's about to get him, he throws up the power line, the shark bites into it, and electrocutes, which is pretty silly. John Kiefer, the esteemed sci-fi horror fantasy critic, has said if you judge Jaws 2 against the first Jaws, it's very disappointing. It's not really that good of a film. If you judge Jaws 2 against Jaws 3 and 4, it looks great in comparison, and I guess that's true.
1. Terrified you like nothing you have ever experienced. Then, just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water, 2. Continued the legend and spread the fear. Next summer, nature's most terrifying creature takes on an all-new dimension, and for the first time, The terror of Jaws will not stop at the edge of the screen.
I like Jaws 3.
Yeah, explain yourself.
I don't think it's a good movie. If I was going to go see a movie like this, I would want a good popcorn movie. It does deliver on that.
It is certainly like the exploitation movie version of the first film.
It's got great chemistry between Dennis Quaid and the girlfriend.
Really? You think so?
I think so. Seem like a believable couple.
Not a big fan of Dennis Quaid in general.
I don't like Dennis Quaid either, but that's besides the point.
Jaws 3D is the actual title of the
Yeah.
film. The two Brody sons, Mike and Sean, are now living in Florida. Mike has got a job as an engineer at... It is literally SeaWorld.
It is actually SeaWorld.
Which seems like weird corporate synergy. Hey, we're a theme park. We want people to come to our park.
Kill all of them.
Yeah, let's agree to appear in a movie where a shark gets in and kills people. It seems like a weird thing to do.
I really liked, as you referred to it, 007,
It's
Jaws Bond.
You said this movie is like a James Bond movie. How do you say...
Like a Timothy Dalton James Bond movie now.
I don't see
Because
it.
there's explosions.
The shark's not flying around the world banging chicks and killing people. I mean, he's killing people, but he's not doing another...
Yeah, but there's that one Timothy Dalton movie where people get set in tubes underneath the water.
Yeah.
And there's tubes underneath the water.
Yes, that's true. Living
And
daylight.
When the shark bites it at the end. Let's see what I did there. Even his head floats towards the screen.
Yeah, let's talk about the 3D effects in this film. Obviously,
Crappy. That's why this movie gets a bad rap.
the 3D effects are terrible. They look like
those,
shit.
Yes, those are problematic.
When the diver gets killed, his severed hand is floating.
Yes.
This movie was made during the brief early 80s revival in 3D. It came out around the same time as Friday the 13th Part 3, which I love, and Amityville Part 3, which I don't. This movie, for me, might be at the bottom of the 3D threequels. The scene that always sticks out of my brain where the 3D effects are just really evidently shitty is the very end when the shark breaks through the glass. Mm-hmm. Puppet is slowly approaching the screen in slow motion. The glass breaks apart and flies towards the screen. It looks really bad, man. The plot is dumb. Two sharks get into SeaWorld, a baby and the mom. The baby dies, and now the mother is out for revenge. This movie could have been called Jaws the Revenge. Also, is that dumb? That's dumb, right? I don't think sharks are capable of vengeance. I'm also pretty sure that sharks do not raise their children. I know it's a dumb movie, and who
It's
cares?
a movie. I'm not saying that this is a well-executed movie by any means. It sets out to be an entertaining movie. It delivers on that. There is a lot of problems with the cast.
You said you liked Dennis Quaid as Mike. I think he's bland.
See, I like it. The charisma that him and the actress plays his girlfriend.
Yeah, the dolphin trainer.
When they're on screen together is nice.
I don't like what they do with Sean. They turn him into a generic, horny teenager.
Well, yeah.
Most of the rest of the cast is generic in this. There's the shark hunter guy who's brought in, the very stock parts character, or Lou Gossett Jr. as the head of SeaWorld. I think there are some things in this movie that are unintentionally hilarious, and I think Lou Gossett Jr. is so funny in this. Academy Award-winning actor Lou Gossett Jr. is the jive-talking owner of SeaWorld in Jaws 3D.
Well, you say what you will. I enjoyed the movie.
At this point, the puppet is starting to look bad. The movie does some things that are on paper cool. We get a POV shot of somebody being eaten by the shark. It's awkward looking. The shark swallows the guy whole and then crushes them with her throat muscles. Wouldn't it be cooler to watch him getting torn apart by the teeth? Then they blow the fucking shark up. The jaws fly towards the camera. It looks bad. The dolphins come out of the water at the end and hey, it's happy.
Yeah, there are some really cheesy things, like there's dolphins at the end.
Yeah, the whole dolphin subplot is pretty damn cheesy.
I think it was a nice touch that the dolphin saved him from the shark the first time.
Yeah.
I probably would have wrote that into a script myself. One thing I got disappointed about, there was no dolphin-shark showdown.
Yeah, we really didn't get that in this one.
We should have.
We should have had Flipper versus Jaws.
Missed opportunity.
We're on opposite ends of the pool when it comes to Jaws 3D. I think it's a bore. My least favorite film in the franchise.
I'd say it's a guilty pleasure.
Now, before we move on, originally, Jaws 3 was planned as a parody. We can't have another shark attack Amity Island third time. That would be asinine. Hey, let's make fun of it. And it was going to be written by John Hughes, who was still working at National Lampoon magazine at the time. And it was going to be directed by Joe Dante. The title was going to be Jaws 3, People Zero.
That's a great title.
And apparently it was going to start with Peter Benchley being eaten by a shark in a swimming pool. The studio said, we don't want to devalue our own brand by making fun of it. Considering I think Jaws 3D was kind of shit, I would want to see the parody and say, I still want to see that movie.
Instinctively, man has always been drawn to the sea. Its beauty, its mystery, its secrets. But there is also a vague uncertainty, a sense of intrusion into an alien world, where man is unwelcome and completely at the mercy of the most terrifying predator on Earth. Man's deepest fear has risen again. This time, it's personal.
Each of the Jaws sequels made less money than the previous film. They're still successful, but the franchise was increasingly less profitable. But for some reason, they said, well, we gotta make another one. And there's about a 3 or 4 year difference between each of these films. Jaws 1 was 75, Jaws 2 was 78, Jaws 3D was 73, and Jaws The Revenge was 87.
You need to correct yourself.
Oh, did I say 73 instead of 83?
You did.
We'll fix it in post. Despite that gap between each of the films, apparently Jaws The Revenge was rushed into production. I think it was one of those cases where some other movie went over schedule and had to be pushed back, and they said, we need to fill this release date, let's rush a fourth Jaws movie into production. The fact that the movie was apparently rushed is evident in Jaws The Revenge, widely considered not only one of the worst sequels of all time, but one of the worst movies of all time.
Yeah, I have some thoughts about this movie.
Officially, this movie disregards Jaws 3D, which isn't really evident in the film, but the only thing that contradicts the previous movie is that now Mike is an oceanographer instead of an engineer.
Yeah, and his wife is an artist instead of a biologist.
Yeah, it's not the girlfriend from the last movie. He was still young. He could have changed his degree and gotten a new girlfriend. There's no reason this movie can't be in continuity with Jaws 3D.
Well, that's one of my biggest gripes about it.
Is that it doesn't follow up on the third one?
Yeah. I really hate it when movies do that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's just sort of lazy.
Like, you can't do that.
It's an investment on our behalf.
Right. Last movie of the series, you just say, hey guys, that shit didn't happen. Here's this movie.
For some reason, people behind this movie, Universal, said, gotta be a Brody family member in each of the Jaws films. And at this point, the only original cast member they could get back was Lorraine Gary as the wife Ellen. So now Ellen Brody is the main character of the franchise. Sheriff Brody's dead. Sean is now top there at Amity Island. And on the week of Christmas, Sean is eaten by a shark. In order to get over her grief, I guess, Ellen goes to the Bahamas where Michael is living with his wife and
They make her go.
Which seems like a weird thing. Your mother just lost a child. She's grieving. Hey, Mom, come to the Bahamas. Ellen is convinced the shark is out for revenge. That this is the specter of the shark from, I guess, the original movie or the previous 2 movies. It's after the family. And she's very worried that Michael's going to get killed next. And naturally, while he's down there in the Bahamas, Jaws appears. They actually use the term voodoo shark in the movie. And the Jaws fandom, as it is, has adopted that term, voodoo shark. What do you think of the decision to move the Jaws franchise into the realm of magic realism?
I think if they would have just kept it all in their head, it would have been a more interesting film. They kind of played around with that a little bit.
Is she crazy? But then again, the shark is definitely real.
Well, right.
The film never outright says that the shark is a specter of retaliation. They never say it's a ghost shark. It's very heavily implied, but they don't come out and say that.
It also has a shitload of stars on it.
It's dumb. The voodoo shark is a dumb concept, and very much at odds with the rest of the series. But is it really any dumber than a mommy shark avenging the death of its child?
No. Or yes, it is.
I don't think it is. This is the 4th movie. Let's just say, fuck it, the shark's a ghost. Why not at this point? Why not make it a ghost shark?
Just do a Robo Shark.
Robo Shark. Make it really dumb.
But a cyborg shark.
The shark corpse from the first movie was abducted by aliens, and they turned it into a robotic killing machine. Mecha Jaws. There's your movie, Universal.
There's your Jaws 5.
Jaws 5, Mecha Jaws.
We can rebuild it. We have the technology.
Large portions of the film don't even really focus on the shark. This movie could have been subtitled How Ellen Brody Got Her Groove Back. A large portion of the runtime is focused on Lorraine Gary and her romance with Hoagie, the pilot, played by the great Michael Caine.
His performance actually was really entertaining, I feel.
Michael Caine is one of those actors who's entertaining to watch in just about anything.
Yeah.
And famously, he was in the Bahamas shooting this movie when he won his Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor for the Woody Allen movie, Hannah and Her Sisters. So he couldn't accept it because he was shooting fucking Jaws The Revenge. Point has been brought up to him, and in an interview he said, well, I've never seen the film, and by all accounts, it's awful. However, I have seen the house it paid for, and it's fantastic. He's good-humored about Jaws 4. What do you think of the romantic comedy aspect of this film?
I don't really care for it. I just want to see the shark kill people, which is my biggest complaint about the movie.
There's not much shark carnage?
Exactly.
It's got a pretty low body count. I think only 1 person is actually killed by the shark. Well, 2, Sean and then some swimmer.
Yeah, but that's really about it.
Speaking of the romance, it's focused on Mike Brody and his relationship with his wife and their daughter. Okay, sure, character development, but why is the shit in a Jaws movie? She's a scrap metal artist. There's a lot of focus on the sex life of the characters, and the most exciting thing is he's researching conch shells. Ooh, riveting stuff. By this point, they should have taken Bruce out behind the shed and shot him and told the kids that Bruce went to a farm upstate where he's going to be happy and he can eat all the swimmers he wants to. The puppet does not look good in this one.
No, he does not.
There's one sequence where it's levitating in the air in front of the boat, roaring. The shark roars repeatedly. Who looked at this and said, yeah, that's cool. They must have really been rushed. There's a sequence that should have been exciting when the shark is chasing Michael through a derelict ship on the bottom of the ocean. I could see that being an intense sequence and a better movie. It's laughable in Jaws The Revenge. This movie is unintentionally entertaining. One of the weirdest things about the movie is Mario Van Peebles' character, Mike's research buddy, what's his name? Jake, and that ridiculous, fake, terrible Jamaican accent. Hey, man!
Would you say he Jamaican you crazy?
He is Jamaican me crazy. And apparently, Mario Van Peebles improvised the bulk of his dialogue, which is very obvious, because there's a moment when he starts singing the Jaws theme, which raises a lot of questions. That confuses me more than the voodoo shark. How can a character in a fictional film series be aware of the theme song for the film?
Easy, he's Deadpool.
The end of the film is very notorious, especially the fate of Jake and how the shark dies. People like to bring this up a lot. How does the shark die?
They kill him Little Mermaid style.
Ellen hijacks a ship, goes out in the middle of the ocean. The shark jumps up, and she impales it with the front of the ship, and then what happens?
It explodes.
It fucking blows up. For no reason.
They blow the shark up in like every movie, don't
Almost, all except two. I think the reason why the shark is supposed to explode is earlier in the film, the shark swallowed like a pulse thing. And I think what is supposed to be happening is when the shark gets impaled, that causes the sensor to explode, and that's why it blows up. But the film doesn't say that. And then what happens? Jake comes back. He floats to the surface.
Yeah.
And it's not like you saw him get swallowed whole by the shark. You saw him under the waves getting chomped on. But then he comes back and he's fine.
Because it was a ghost shark.
Evidently. Apparently what really happened is originally Jake died, but test audiences responded so strongly to that character that they insisted that he live somehow. There is a print of this film out there somewhere where Jake dies.
Good.
Now, the real reason I like this movie better than Jaws 3D, I think it's more entertaining, albeit unintentionally. It's shorter. All the previous Jaws movies were about 2 hours. This one's only 90 minutes. It's a little zippier. Now, is it a pathetic stain on the legacy of Steven Spielberg's masterpiece? Of course it is. Somebody probably wrote the screenplay in a weekend, assisted by a six-pack. I have no doubt about it. Jaws the Revenge has a stupid charm of its own.
It's guilty pleasure for you, and 3's a guilty pleasure for me.
That's fair.
Because I thought 4 was stupid, dude.
No, it is. It's totally fucktarded.
To me, there's no redeeming qualities for it other than Michael Caine.
I think the redeeming quality is that it's unintentionally hilarious. And that's the last Jaws movie, at least until they remake the first one anyway.
Which we don't know if it's happening or not.
Yeah, every once in a while there's rumbles. What'll happen is they'll do a TV miniseries version, and they'll do that bullshit of, we're going back to the book. It'll come out, and it'll be gone, and everybody will forget about it. Nobody will care. There really was no point in even making sequels to Jaws, because there have been so many rip-offs. Tentacles, which was Jaws with an octopus. You had Barracuda. Some movies that was Jaws with a bear. In fact, you had two. Grizzly and Claws. And I've never seen Grizzly, but apparently it is almost a shot-for-shot remake of Jaws, but with a bear.
Now I'm picturing a bear doing a death roll in the middle of the
Yeah,
ocean.
really, yes. There have been 2 Jaws video games. You ever played those? There was a Jaws game on the original Nintendo that was just called Jaws, based on the 4th movie, notorious for how shitty it is. And then there was a game about 8 or 7 years ago called Jaws Unleashed, which I never played. I read the reviews and they said it wasn't very good, but I've seen gameplay clips of it. It looks kind of fun, because you're playing as Jaws. You're playing as the shark, swimming around and eating people.
My brother had it.
And we've already talked about when they make video games of Friday the 13th or Dracula, you never get to play as the monster, and that's so tedious because that's who you want to be. It is kind of admirable that they made a Jaws video game where you're just playing as the shark. Did you go to Universal Studios when they still had the Jaws?
No, I've never been to Universal Studios.
Oh, I thought you had gone.
No, I went to Disney.
Oh, you went to Disney, not
I
Universal.
went to the lame one.
Very famous for years on the tram there at Universal Studios in Orlando. They had Jaws come up, and that's gone now, unfortunately. I think. I've never been. I want to go one of these days. I don't know if we'll get a remake, if we'll get a sequel. Jaws is a vital property, and they're going to try and revive it somehow, eventually. That first movie's really good, and the sequels are,
They're a dive in quality.
This is kind of a shorter episode. We apologize for that. We're going to make a second one this month. We're going to record again next week. Before we go for a swim in the ocean, what about you throw out a line on our email address?
I would love to, but I can never remember our email. But on a serious note, guys, be sure to leave in the comments either on the YouTube video or on Facebook, letting us know if you have any suggestions for upcoming episodes.
Got a couple gaps in our schedule right now, so if you want to send us suggestions, very much do so. Yes, please. You can email us at bangersandmash88@yahoo.com. That's the word bangers, that's the letter N, that's the word mash, that's the number 88 at yahoo.com. We have a Facebook group, www.facebook.com/thebangersandmash show. Please like us, leave a comment. Definitely, if you have a show suggestion, please send it our way. The rest of the summer is scheduled out, but we have a couple gaps in the fall.
We always do take into consideration things that you guys suggest. Aside from requesting episodes, give us some pointers on things you think we can improve upon.
This show is perfect. I don't know what you're talking about.
Anyhow, so... Alright far as us going into the ocean, you can do that because I'm tired of dying at the end of every episode.
All right, I'm going to go for a swim.
Glub, glub.
Do.
Jaws, the shark, lurking in the dark of the depths of the sea. One day on a lark, decides to get rowdy, get real violent. Takes a vacay up to Amity Island. Sunshine, lotion, fun in the sun, blood in the ocean. Everybody run, cause it's crazy how few fucks this shark gives. He'll eat naked ladies, he'll eat little kids, oh no. The one thing keeping the community safe is a guy named Brody and his pal Richard Dreyfuss. Jaws don't know that a storm's gonna come. He just wants everyone to be his chum. Get it? Get it? The mayor don't care if the townsfolk die. He doesn't want to spoil the 4th of July. He's like, everyone cool it and go for a swim. But holy shit, here comes that Finn singing Jaws is here. Here is Jaws. He is a shark without a cause. He was in a movie, you should watch it, it's called Jaws. Jaws is here. Here is Jaws. He is a shark who fights the law. He was in a movie that everyone saw. Long story short, the beach gets closed. The mayor's like, okay, yeah, this blows. Suddenly Jaws has got a price on his head, but the wrong little shark baby ends up dead. It was Jaws' little brother. Now he's pissed. The mayor just shot to the top of his list. He sneaks in his house in the middle of the night, and he eats that fucker in a single bite. Golly. Dead, so Brody's in charge. He knows the real killer is still at large. So he and the Dreyfuss make a decision. They're going on a mission. They're gonna go fishing for Jaws. A man named Quint lets him use his boat on the condition that he'd be the one to cut Jaws' throat. Cause he was a sailor back in World War II, and Jaws ate his entire crew. Whoa, Jaws is here. Here is Jaws. He is a shark without a cause. He was in a movie called Jaws. Jaws is here. Here is Jaws. He is a shark who fights the law. He was in a movie that everyone saw. They're out on the sea, they wait all night. Where could Jaws be? He's nowhere in sight. Dreyfuss decides to go down in a cage, and Jaws shows up in a full-on rage. He tears up the cage like paper in a shredder, while Dreyfuss makes his wetsuit wetter. He hides behind a rock like a cowardly prick, and he doesn't come back until the end of the flick. Brody's like, we're gonna need a bigger boat, so they go back home and get a bigger boat. The biggest boat that's ever sailed, gonna kick Jaws' ass, or I guess his tail. Yeah, his tail. But oh my shit, Jaws jumps out and Quint gets bit right in half like a Kit Kat bar. Up in the sky, there's a shooting star. That's Quint. Up in heaven, he's a star now. Brody's angry, he's all like, fuck it. He takes a harpoon and welds it to a rocket. Jaws' last words are, whoa, respect. Then he explodes and it's a pretty good effect. Yeah, Jaws is dead. Long live Jaws. He was a shark without a cause. He was in a movie, you should watch it, it's called Jaws. Jaws is dead. Long live Jaws. He was a shark who fought the law. He was in a movie that everyone saw. He was in a movie that everyone saw. Jaws is dead. Long live Jaws. He was a shark without a cause. He was in a movie called Jaws. Jaws is dead. At the Academy Awards. Long live Jaws. He was robbed. He was a shark without a cause. Sharks exist in real life. He was in a movie that everyone saw. Jaws is dead. Long live Jaws.